stuck on the wrong side of eternity? I'm afraid so. If Charon's motives really were altruistic, then we've lost everything. It's almost easier to think that they were evil because the alternative is so much worse. Otherwise, we got left behind. All because, in part,
forge ahead. Never linger.
we're stuck in finitude, in mortality, in pain, and in suffering, and in misery. I think back to the planet's original motto. Like the souls of the lost calling out to us on the far side of the river.
Another battle demands our attention. Crush them! Hold on! Let's make it quick!
Help me, Lord Captain!
Thanks for watching. You know, I want you guys to know how genuinely I mean it. It's been amazing. Thank you so much for all the support. I also want to give a massive thanks to all of my patrons. Thank you, Moonvale. Thank you, IDGA Funk. Thank you, Timothy. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Max. Thank you, Asha. Thank you, Tally. It's still coming. Analog horror is dying. I see videos making this claim at least once every couple of weeks. If you aren't aware, analog horror is a subgenre of internet horror that draws inspiration from pre-internet analog technology and the relatively unmoderated nature of media during the 20th century. Some examples are things like Vita Carnis, Greylock, and Angel Hair.
Guided by faith.
I asked my audience, are you becoming immune to horror? Overwhelmingly, longtime horror fans agreed on 2 points.
Doubt is for the weak.
Doesn't end as well as movies do, but we still love it for the unique stories that have been told in the genre. So, how can new creators remedy the first point while emphasizing the second? How can newcomers
Faith without deeds
create
is
stories that are
eradicated.
both frightening and interesting? Personally, I think the answer to both of these questions is storytelling.
I know what is to come.
Since you clicked on this video, I'm going to bet that you're just like me. You had some sort of experience with horror that you're dying to recreate for someone else. You want to tell a story that resonates with people, a story that scares people. I want to help you do just that. So I'll be sharing 11 lessons that have helped me to tell better stories. I also reached out to 15 of the best respected creators in internet horror. Your interviews from analysts such as Wendigoon, Postra, and Immortal Marcus, as well as the artists behind some of the best horror stories the internet has ever seen. We're talking Vita Carnis, Pal, Angel Hair, Greylock, God, and more. They will share their wisdom with you so that you can craft gutting and gripping stories. I hope all of that together give you a deeper understanding of storytelling and a greater appreciation for the stories you love. Most importantly, I hope that this video will encourage you.
Be careful not to cross my gaze.
But if I'm going to be sharing my thoughts and opinions, you deserve some idea of who I am and what I do on this channel. I'm Curmudgeon, and I make narrative-driven horror analysis videos that aim to be
Isn't this a job for the
deeply
stars?
immersive. I'm always experimenting with different ways to tell stories, both with my analysis videos
Me?
as well as with my own
If you
horror
insist,
series.
Lord Captain.
I've learned a ton about telling better stories since I started this channel, and while there's no silver bullet piece of
Anything
advice
else?
that's going to best for every storyteller, creator, and
What
artist,
an
I can
unfortunate
at least
turn
share
of
what's
fate.
helped this channel to grow, just in case it helps you too. But before we get into that, there are a couple of important things we can talk about. Starting right now, to celebrate 100,000 subscribers, Budget Plush Petition with Makeshift is officially live. The channel's mascot is but a drop of the extra cosmic ooze between universes. When he first bled through into our world, he had to pick a course of action. Should he tear open a rift to the realm of chaos to subjugate all life in this miserable universe? Or maybe he can display his grand power to earn respect, adoration, and service of all who beheld him. Of course, there's only one right option, the most diabolical and malicious plan of all, to become a comfortable plushie and secure a position.
A tactically sound approach.
You can welcome this adorable abomination into your
Victory
home for
is
just
important.
$49 plus shipping and taxes, and the irrevocable agreement not to share his forbidden knowledge with anyone
I will
else.
do
Shipping
my
is
duty.
available worldwide, so no matter where you are, this brew wants to be
At
near
your
you,
beck and
where
call.
you're most comfortable, most comfortable. So, if you'd like to help Legend achieve his definitely altruistic goal of befriending humankind, a goal with no ulterior motives whatsoever, also link in the description to sign up for the makeshift petition. The petition will run for exactly 10 days, in which time we'll need to collect 200 signatures. Otherwise, the petition will fail, like the production. As I should say, thank you all so much for making this channel hit 100,000 subscribers. Now, let's do our best to show
God,
makeshift
Emperor,
how
move
bad
through
we
me.
want this
Be
guy
the
to be
fire
real.
in my heart.
Right. Maybe you want to make friends with people instead of grotesque bird-shaped horrors beyond the bounds of the cosmos. But
As
that's
the
hard
Emperor
to do
commands,
if you
what
stay
is a prayer?
And boy, would I know for eons the eternal death stench of the old great ones clung to me.
What is this
I
foreboding?
know, but with the right fragrance to boost your mood and set the tone for your day,
West,
that cosmic tragedy can be amended. That's why I'm happy to announce that this video is sponsored by Scentbird. Scentbird is a service that provides you with monthly fragrance options so that you can experiment with new scents to suit your needs. I'll be honest, I'm pretty clueless when it comes to cologne, but Scentbird made everything super easy. I started out by taking their quiz, which helped me to pick fragrances based on my personality. I ended up settling on 2 that I wanted to try. By Tommy Bahama and French Leather by Memo Paris. As you can see, they send you the samples in these little magnetic carrying cases, which feel very premium. I thought that the samples would be tiny, but like, you can see, like, that's completely full. Like, that's
Nothing can
lot.
catch me off guard.
This is huge compared to my expectations. It's hard to pick a favorite between the fragrances they sent me. I really love how beachy and relaxed Maritime Triumph is. It's very kind of like bright and citrusy without being too floral. That said, I think I have to say that the French Leather is my favorite. I put on like a couple spritzes in the morning before I get to work, and it just has these horrific, like subtle woody notes that get me into a professional, focused mindset, even though I just sit at the computer all day writing goofy videos. Honestly, these are fragrances I would never have even thought of trying without going through Scentbird. A bottle of French Leather can go for like $550. I can't justify spending anywhere near that much on fragrance when I don't even know what it smells like or if I'll like wearing it. But Scentbird really lowers the barrier to entry for fragrances
Onward
as
to
a whole.
victory.
I mean, if you use my link, your first 30-day sample is just $8. Even after that, you can get additional samples for like $16.95.
The shadows
which is
reveal
crazy
their
compared to the $550 example that I get in Scentbird. But even without lowering the price point, Scentbird also provides you with the quiz I mentioned before and tons of comprehensive
Now
detail
that
about
was
each
easy.
fragrance, so you can learn which scents you might enjoy.
Always
even if
striving
you're
for
a complete
greatness.
beginner like me. If you'd like to try Scentbird for yourself and start smelling amazing,
They
go ahead
say
and
I
scan
have a
my QR
magnetic
code.
personality.
Use my code PRO.
That certainly
I
explains
link in
why
the
I keep
description to
attracting
get a
trouble.
massive 55% discount on your first month with Scentbird. That's code PRO. The link in the description, or scan the QR code for 55% off. Now, let's go ahead and dive into the first lesson.
Change is coming.
Over the last year,
The edge
I've
is
learned
nigh.
a lot about
The
storytelling.
blinded ones are harmless. No sense in shooting them and drawing attention.
Fire on the nearest target! Don't kill the tech priest! We need to take him alive! Pull back!
May knowledge be thy fate. Let the cycle be discontinued.
By the throne!
I notify you. The convoy received an order to meet you. It is no longer This was...
The voices are being weird about him. There's...
Altar Templum Calixis. I have heard the name before. The station appears on House Orcelio's star charts, in the Furibunda system, not far from the Void Colony of Footfall. You have traveled a long way to come here, esteemed Magos.
How strange it is.
My estimate with my mentor's work, I acknowledge.
Every moment a chance for greatness. Stay sharp.
You are...
When the
Duty beckons.
Would you look at that?
You left the Navis Imperialis to serve the rogue trader. Do you ever regret it, Seneschal?
No, I do not regret it in the least. Serving in the Imperial Navy is a fine thing to do. But it was only under Lady Theodora that I truly felt the significance of what I was doing.
Marching ahead.
And I've gotten to see what works and what doesn't for this audience. I'm going to distill all of that down into 11 lessons, starting with the most philosophical and foundational lesson.
Venture forth. Perfect. Challenging me was a mistake.
I'll bleed you dry.
The enemies of the Emperor will be undone! I'll do it. Escape the Emperor's judgment. As the Emperor commands, I act. I'll do it.
Will do. What an unfortunate turn of fate.
Let's get to it. Commander.
Activate calculate fury algorithm. The undesired tool. Comprehend all.
Easy.
Tried and tested tactics are the best ones.
It will be done. For Conferencius! At your beck and call.
Let's make it quick.
Time to slaughter someone.
As the Emperor...
Cover me!
Battlefields are always drowned in scarlet. Isn't this a job? Now you avert your eyes.
Heavy is the tread of his faithful.
Count me out.
My place is at the fore. I took care of this one.
I'm here, maggots.
Commander.
Power resides in the will of the righteous. Faith without deed eradicated. Sins hidden.
Did I mention?
I am
Souls cry out for salvation. I forge my own success. Let's seize the moment.
Generally, this is the most grateful and actionable advice. So, stories are mostly objective. But to understand why,
Let's see this
you need to
through.
know how a viewer's subjective experience affects your story. That
Duty
might sound a little
beckons.
contradictory, but stick with me. Anytime a viewer comes to a new story, their own life experiences become the lens that they're going to view your story with. It naturally warps and colors the objective image of your story in some way. This lens isn't perfect. It's all they've got, and it's all they'll ever have. Most of you are writing for strangers, people who are coming to your work from basically any background you can imagine, and countless more that you couldn't. A broke college student who spends every dime they have on books is going to experience your story differently than an 82-year-old veteran who just wants to connect with his grandson. They're both going to have a very different experience than a middle school student who's watching your series in full blast through his AirPods while his two younger brothers scream and crawl all over him. It's almost like your singular work is being split into three totally different stories. So, how do you account for this? You don't. You don't have control over how their experience has prepared them for your story, and you don't have control over the environment that they're experiencing your story in. But you do have control over your story. You have control
Forge ahead,
over what
never
elements of your
linger.
own experience you put into the story. You have control over the words you use and scenes you shoot, and the connections in between them all. That's where the shift towards objectivity begins. Storytelling is the most intuitive form of communication we have. We organize the events of our lives into narratives, and then we express those narratives through writing, film, music, even movement. Before we know any spoken language, we know the language of stories. Whether you think it's because of intentional design like myself, or the collective unconscious, or because of common evolutionary advantage, the fundamental fact remains the same. Stories connect with people on a deeper level than subjective experience. They resonate with the human material itself. Okay, that went way deeper into the weeds than I was
This
expecting.
ocular
but
implant was a
how does all
worthwhile
this
investment.
abstract stuff inform your storytelling? Well, if stories go deeper than subjective experience, then there's an objective target to aim at. And if there's an objective target, your aim can
Marching
improve.
ahead.
You can learn to tell better stories. Great, so how do we do that? Well, that's where the next lesson comes in. Storytelling isn't just about character and conflict, it's about setting expectations. working on YouTube, a piece of advice I got a lot was, it's all about storytelling. That's 100% true, but it's really hard to settle on a good, robust definition of storytelling. Heck, even a story for that matter. I used to define a story like this. You have a protagonist with a goal, but there's conflict that prevents them from achieving their goal. The story is the process of the protagonist overcoming the obstacles in their way and achieving their goal in spite of hardship. The problem was, I didn't see any way to apply this to my videos. I mean, horror often lacks strongly defined protagonists, and most characters never achieve their goals. There's fear and failure, after all. So are horror stories just bad stories? No, it's not the stories that are flawed. It was just my narrow definition of a story that was the problem. Character and conflict aren't the base elements of storytelling. They're vehicles to something even more essential. Your viewer's ability or inability to predict where the story is going. Nowadays, I use an incredibly flexible definition of storytelling.
Onward to victory.
Is the art of arranging and emphasizing information to create a desired emotional response.
To the trial.
To be a good storyteller is to be an expert at controlling the release of information and understanding the effect it will have on your viewer. That means that a good storyteller can create more engaging characters, more interesting plots, and of course, in the case of horror, more fear. It's a broad definition because I wanted to include every medium that can be used to
demands our attention.
Visuals,
I will level you.
You, as a storyteller, are always presenting your viewer with new information. Is always looking for patterns and trying to predict what's going to happen next. And every piece of data you present is setting up new expectations for your viewer, or it's shifting their prior expectations. Intentionally creating and tracking your viewer's expectations allows you to keep them oriented in the story. They know mostly where the story is going, and they know mostly what's going to happen. The fun of experiencing a story takes place in that range of uncertainty surrounding your viewer's expectations, and in completely flipping the script. This is where you have the most control as a storyteller, but you might not know it yet. So,
follow my lead.
Let's look at a few ways to create strong expectations.
It will be done.
Stories spoil themselves. You just don't always know when it happens.
Victory is imminent.
Stories is so interesting the second time. You get to notice all the details that you might have missed the first time through. Misunderstand, this isn't just a gimmick or to the viewers when it's done right. It has a strong subconscious effect on the first-time viewers as well.
There
By
is
introducing
movement in the Imperium.
where they become relevant to the plot, it keeps up the illusion that things are happening off-screen, so to speak. It makes your world feel alive and expansive, and it makes your viewer wonder what they're not seeing. I want to tell you about a particularly good example of this technique. Here's a minor spoiler for the movie. Let's get to this time.
But still
Beginning of the movie, it establishes that the main character, OJ, is his dad's a Wild West themed tourist trap. He pays a visit to June, the owner of the Western Park, to sell one final horse, and offhandedly mentions that he wants to buy back some of the horses eventually. June seems surprised and hesitant, but agrees. In the same way a mother might appease her child by promising to buy him a realty rate someday. The mention of OJ buying back horses and June's reaction very small in the broader context of the scene, but it sets up an expectation for the viewer. OJ's
Emperor, give me strength.
Busy. In the moment, it shows that June is kind of ashamed of
I'm not accustomed to being ordered around.
A small lasting experience that you realize the full implications of this momentary interaction.
I know what to do. That's how it's done.
Sell back the horses. He can't sell back the horses. He's been using them as bait for the thing hiding in the flats. That reveal hits so much harder because it's not just another piece of information. It's an instant revelation. It's been lingering with you for the first half of the entire movie. Here's the takeaway from that example. Make your viewer ask a question before you give them an answer. Any questions in your viewer's mind is almost always preferable to giving them an answer they didn't know they wanted.
I will bathe this battlefield in righteous fury.
Create this amazing rhythm of setting, exceeding, and subverting the expectations and keep the viewer
I'll do it.
engaged. It says, most importantly, you trust with your gut. That trust is a resource that you can use to experiment with different ideas throughout the story. The viewer knows will understand what they want, so things take in a direction they weren't expecting. They know they're doing it for a purpose.
We could deal with it.
Even plot holes or
I will do my duty. Ha! Reduce the dust.
you seem to. They take you to enables you to stretch out the time between your questions and answers, enabling what I think is the most powerful application of this
I
technique.
know what is to
In
come.
fact, it's just so powerful. Let's just go ahead and call it a bonus lesson.
We'll do.
It's a thought I gave note on the spans about half the movie, but you can go much broader than that. Some of the best stories tell you exactly where they're going to end in the first act, maybe even in the first line. Then you spend the rest of the runtime questioning
Witness my resolve.
that they are. Technically, to do this, you have to know where your story is headed. For example, from the very start of the series, you know what has to happen. Rain has to make it into the fires of Mount Doom. With your expectation of what's going to happen is constantly shaken up by the conflict.
Step aside.
Still,
The
that
navigator
initial
is
promise
coming.
keeps the viewer invested and oriented in the plot. No matter how
Isn't this a job for the
twists and
serfs?
turns. That's the power of spoiling your own story. Keep in mind, just because you set an expectation doesn't mean you have to meet that expectation. A lot of the artistry of storytelling is about knowing when you want to keep
I have
promise.
read tomes of military tactics.
Telling your viewer where the story is headed is a good thing, but you don't always have to tell the truth. I'm not claiming that I've discovered
Guided by
anything
faith.
new. I'm basically just describing irony and foreshadowing. There's more basic these terms apply to stories I wanted to tell.
I've seen worse battles than this in my
But when I
time.
finally started to think of foreshadowing in terms of spoiling your own story,
Experience. Nothing matters more.
to me right away. I can finally see how it fit into my stories. It's work for me.
What is
That
this
some other way
foreboding?
of understanding it should work better. I'll talk about it later on, but I'll admit that the scope of this video is inherently limited. I can't create a definitive guide to storytelling, and I don't think anybody can.
Consider that off limits.
It isn't the best way to do so. But it really is what works for me, and I can only share the method that I have, not the method that
Battlefields are always drowned in scarlet.
Repetition is meaning. Let's learn this lesson with an example. Favorite Warhammer the past few years, trust with sleep, although natural, being
God Emperor, move through me. Be the fire in my heart.
Like tank, painful creatures, each one deadlier and more vicious than the last. The very surface of Atropos shifts.
As the
around
Emperor
Spain.
commands, I act.
She runs to the dead. Dead Superman. A monstrous symbol flies into the snatching her open open, causing her body to rapidly decompress.
That's actually sound.
Burns from its ragged shadow. All her flesh rushes to escape into the opening end.
At your beck and call.
She lets it next to the burning wreckage of her ship.
They who discern the future own the battlefield.
But her fleeting mortality melts fear.
On it.
Like hell
Speak on.
in all its eternity. And say, inconspicuously among the stars. Start playing their role. One thing is made clear. This world is not for Sabine. Not only is Atropos inhospitable for Sabine, it's hostile towards you, too. After death after death, defeat after defeat. Someone's pain, or difficulty overcoming the game's challenges create a kind of emotional resonance between you and the doomed asteroid.
The enemies of the Emperor will be undone.
Understand the purpose
In thy
of
light I
shifting
stand, and thy light I
you
crave.
the most insane falls I've ever
Doubt is
seen.
for the weak.
That will be. And
As the
there,
Emperor commands, I act.
sitting unclenched in the midst of the unearthly.
Faith without deeds is worthless.
No one, just
I'll do it.
It's
Doubt is for the weak. Strike is a prayer.
creates a strong set of expectations for the player. Live,
Venture
die,
forth.
repeat. It's so simple, but that repetition makes it an astoundingly good foundation for storytelling. Because Returnal uses the reset as a narrative device instead of simply a gameplay element, any departure from the pattern immediately stands out and is just infused with meaning. Every time the rules of this strange new world are broken, it has radical implications for the story, and the player can feel it every single time. Returnal is a very extreme application of repetition.
I woke up with
Attention to
Every
detail
moment
is the key to
sense
The story
greatness.
doesn't revolve around a Sisyphean struggle on an alien
Onward
nightmare
to
planet.
victory.
After all, it's part of your psychology.
Always striving for greatness.
I mentioned that people are always searching for patterns and information. So let's talk about patterns. A pattern is essentially any recognizable structure that appears more than once. In a horror story, that might be something as atomic as a single word, phrase, image, or number that is
Let's
repeated
seize the
throughout the story.
moment.
Think of Freddy's nursery rhyme from Nightmare on Elm Street, or the lottery numbers from Boss, or even the drawings from Marble Hornets.
All souls cry out for
But
salvation.
they're infused with a lot of meaning because they show up more than once. In my liminal land analysis, I centered the script around the phrase, "You had to be there." You're introduced to the phrase at the start of the video, but its meaning evolves over time. In Act 1, it defines your role in my investigation. In Act 2, it's the main obstacle to my investigation. Finally, in Act 3, it becomes the solution to my investigation. Look, I won't go on yapping about a video that you could just watch for free. Just check it out if you're interested in another example. When you start to look for repeating patterns in stories, you see them everywhere in horror. The individual kills in a slasher movie are a repeating element. Encounters with the monster are a repeating element. However, cosmic horror is certainly the undisputed queen of horror when it comes to finding the fear in patterns. Look no further than Uzumaki, Junji Ito's magnum opus that transforms something so simple as a spiral into a well of infinite dread. Every chapter of Uzumaki centers around the spiral. Yeah, literally just like the shape. Is it a shape? A pattern? Yeah, let's go with that, a pattern. The genius of Uzumaki lies in its simplicity. A lesser story would explain that the spiral was feared by ancient people or reasons of demon or something like that, but Ito does something more masterful. He repeats the pattern. The spiral appears and the spiral destroys. The spiral appears and the spiral melts. The spiral appears and the spiral unravels reality itself. Chapter after chapter, simply repeating the pattern gives the spiral meaning to you, a viewer. It's scary, not because the author, the characters, created it, but because you see
Show them no
like
mercy.
the story equips you to understand the rules of this twisted world, so that you can see how each new terrible piece of the puzzle slots in place. Of course, while Uzumaki is deceptively simple, its expressive nuances to mention as well. While the thread in each chapter centers around the spiral, the spiral is always changing. The pattern appears in the story as drawings. The pattern of the spiral appears in the story as a skull, a spring, a tornado, which each thread is the same but different. This concept is the partner of repetition. Variation. Having repeating elements is already a great addition to the story, but these elements evolve over time without losing identity. It creates a contrast that can emphasize the unique meaning of each individual repetition. Say, it gives you, the storyteller, the chance to play with other themes and ideas in a way that attaching them to its already familiar to your viewer. In Uzumaki, the spiral starts out as the obsession of a single man, transforming into a massive tornado that threatens
It
the
will be done.
fight. Even still, it
Indeed.
continues to evolve, reshaping the entire and twisting it into a spiral itself. The spiral always repeats. increasingly widespread and esoteric.
worse.
Those variations give the story an undeniable sense of direction, which leads me to my final point for this list. To say that something has
What an unfortunate turn of fate.
A stone skipping across the water, it bounces again and again and again before finally sinking its resting place. You know it's going to sink,
Costly
but you
mistake.
never know which skip will its last. It vanishes underneath the surface. Even a story like Uzumaki ends eventually.
I will
You just
bathe
don't know
this
which spiral
battlefield
is
in
the final
righteous
spiral
fury.
until after it arrives. Repetition,
This is
variation,
unacceptable.
resolution. That's the pattern that Uzumaki and many other stories follow. Near the start of the story, some idea is introduced that ties into broader themes and later
If you
events of the
insist,
story.
Lord Captain.
At first, it's just a loud, potentially meaningless detail. But as soon as that element repeats, it becomes a pattern. It signals to the viewer,
That
hey,
is foolishness.
this is important. And it makes them ask, okay, why is this important? Every time that element repeats, it becomes a little bit more significant. The subtle
Let's set
differences
this
in
to
repetitions
time
become
amendment.
more apparent, bolstering the narrative's pursuit of its themes leading up to the ending. In the last
Not my
piece,
area of
the puzzle
expertise.
is set in its place. You see the picture, now complete. You realize what it was all directed towards. Resolution. The last repetition indicates that every other repetition was imperfectly directed towards. The viewer asks, why does this idea keep repeating? The answer should be contained
There
in the
is
final
movement
repetition.
in the Imperium.
Of course, that's only if you want your viewer to
Anything
leave the
else?
story with answers.
What
But you
an
have
unfortunate
done a good
turn
job
of fate.
if the final repetition brings joy if it contributes some new appreciation to everything that came before it. Keep in mind, you don't just have to stop at one repeating element. Most stories have several layered together, all repeating at different intervals like a drum.
Let's see this through.
Variation and resolution achieve three goals in storytelling. They simply equip your viewer to understand your story while also setting up expectations that can lead to the most memorable emotional moments in the narrative. All the while, they keep your viewer engaged, always eager to see how things will evolve as the story continues. Just like spoiling your story, repetition is a very simple writing. But when it comes to storytelling, simple tools used well usually have the greatest psychological effect. It's what we know, what we're most attached to.
Challenging me was a mistake.
Most meaning from. I could spend another couple of hours talking about this, giving more examples and breaking them down, but here's something that's even helpful. Go to the stories you love and repetition. I promise it's there. Think about how often those elements of the story repeat, and ask what that repetition achieves.
Count me out.
Does it help you better
I
understand?
know what to do. That's how it's done.
Does it set up an expectation that's subverted later in the story? And of course,
They won't expect this.
the most important question of all is this. This is the most question that is I have been used as a hero is why? You're a hero. You help to uncover the intention behind the artistic decision. Why did the storyteller choose to kill off this character? Why did this make this? I monster choose to show you asking questions like this can keep in mind that sometimes there aren't good reasons why the decision was made over another. That's why I think it's even more important to ask why, and you're the one telling the story. Ask yourself,
That's just the will of chaos.
Why did I not foresee this?
Death and unbelievers.
Should I kill off this character? Should I hide the monster in the shadows? Should I put it right up the center stage and show it off? No matter what the question is, the answer is usually to make the choice. that
Tried and
serves the
tested
purpose
tactics
of
are the
story.
best ones.
Additionally, if you end up with a scene,
I will do my duty.
plot point that just feels off, misplaced, it's important because it's running in contrast to the purpose of the story.
I'd rather
example of a story that's committed to its purpose, let's look at a series that inspired a lot of what we see today in analog Marvel Hornets. Marvel Hornets centers around a student film of the same name created by Alex Green. At least it was supposed to. See, the film itself was never really finished. Instead, Alex stopped production after he started being sold by a tall, faceless man he called the Operator.
As the Emperor commands, I act.
Tapes that he had bought for his
Faith without deeds is worthless.
Document the Operator's appearances and Alex's descent in paranoia and outright hostility. Technologies and the Stalker's presence would cause camera equipment to severely
As the
glitch
Emperor
and
commands,
destroy
I
Alex's own memories were susceptible to the Operator's unnatural influence. Tapes and memories of life were wiped clean, leaving only a broken record that Alex, and eventually his closest friends, would endure. The entire presentation of Marvel Hornets is done in a found footage style that modern analog audiences are very familiar with. The series are intimately woven together.
My ears are ringing.
Alex was just a student who wanted to be creative. He approached first to the same transforming the tools of creativity and hope into a desperate and insufficient defense against the supernatural. Even so, there's a kind of kinship between Alex and his tools, a shared vulnerability to the monster. The Operator is directly able to erase Alex's memories and the tapes that he relies on, and he's able to indirectly destroy the life that Alex wanted. Because it's presented as found footage,
not to cross my gaze.
also experiences the holes and continuity that the characters struggle with.
I
There's
am a navigator, not a servitor.
The main characters, the monster, and the medium. Every single element of the story serves to further its themes. The fragility of memory, the horror of forgetting, and the loss of innocence. Every choice was subject to the story's purpose. You only get something that harmonious when you're willing to ask.
be gone.
Flies into the story on Alex. Because losing the creative part of itself develops the theme of the loss of innocence. Why does the monster interfere with tapes and memories? Because memories are scary to forget. Why go for found footage instead of traditional media? Because found footage creates a fragmented experience of the characters for the viewer. All of these decisions were made in service to Marvel Hornets themes. But good decisions require
I define the outcome.
It requires sacrifice. I was finishing up my last semester of college, took a film class. On the very first day, we covered, relatively little, honestly, but just like the syllabus and setting up expectations for assignments and stuff like that, which is pretty standard.
Just a minor
But
setback.
my professor decided to end the class with like a short creative exercise. I felt kind of like I was back in elementary school and started passing out pipe cleaners, which we were supposed to
My
bend
place is
and
at the
twist into
fore.
shapes that could represent the three most important things in our lives.
Victory is an exemplary
cross
strike.
symbolizing their relationship with Christ, our
It will be done.
symbolizing marriage, and a musical note
Indeed.
that represented creativity. We were then directed to craft the symbols together. That, the professor said, is what a story
Rejoice in
looks like
battle.
in your head. A tangle of things that are special to you. When you start to
Doubt
work
is
on
for
it,
the weak.
it's not really hard. It might become something different than you envision right now. So, cast the most important thing. What would it be? What are you willing to cut to make your idea real? I looked at my little tangle of calculators, and
Anything is
the
farewell.
It's a hard choice to make. It doesn't feel good to find against the national values of your story. But sometimes, that's what makes the difference between
Emperor, give me strength.
catching no story at all. And sometimes,
If I may,
you have to make one hard choice. And it's most important to your story. It's most important to you. So, what would you sacrifice to ensure that the your story
That won't stop me.
but still filming? Part of the beauty of a story is in its limitations.
Mistake.
Part of defining the purpose for your story is defining the scope of your project. I said important to ask why, but sometimes the right question is, why not? The story can't be everything.
Marching ahead.
And often the things you choose to leave out are vastly more important than the things you leave in. And more ideas in your story will always make it better. Usually, the best choice is a best that doesn't serve the main to the story or advance your purpose. It's very easy to get attached to and hate, but the characters, scenes, or dialogue that were invented in the stories endlessly, but no longer contribute as much as you haven't. You have assumed that the story needed
Your execution is assured.
Show me what you've got!
Because we like planners with me after that class. I have no clue where they're at.